The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of The Godfather, Part 3, where we will discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings of this movie. Joining me today on the panel are Mike Creavey. Hi, Mike.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Very well, very well. And Andrew Hermiz. Hey, Andrew.
Hello, for the third time.
Yes, as we round up our discussion of the Godfather saga, that we brought the gang back together again. It's been a bit since we talked about Godfather 2. So I wanted to get us back together again and finish this up finally. Before we get to that, I do a couple bits of housekeeping. Folks, remember to like The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows on Facebook, where you can find us at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Be sure to retweet us where we're on Twitter at SQPN, and leave us comments and wherever you find us. We want to hear from you and interact with you online and see what you think of and what insights you might have as well. And I want to tell you about another show on the network you're sure to enjoy called Raising the Bets. That's a show I do with my wife, Melanie, and you can find that wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/bets. That's BETTS. Right. So, yes, we are back to talk about The Godfather, Part 3. This was... Again, my first time watching it was when I watched it for this. So I was one of those guys who had not seen the movies before we talked about it on the podcast. And when I was approached this, I had to make a decision. Which one do I watch? Do I watch the original 1990 theatrical release? Do I watch the version edited for home theater release? In the next year, I think it was. Or do I watch the Godfather Coda, The Death of Michael Corleone, which was a recut that came out in 2020 in theaters and then went to home theater release. And actually, I think you can only watch the home video recut from the 1990 version because I don't think you can get the original theatrical. I think there was only minor changes anyway. But had either of you guys seen the 2020 recut?
No, I didn't get around to it.
Okay, yeah.
No, yeah. I mean, I read all about it because I was, curious, obviously,
right.
And the impressions that I got, like the stuff that they added, didn't really, do enough, and substantially. So I never got around to revisiting that.
It looks great. I got to tell you. I mean, I saw the trailer online for it and comparing it to what I just watched of I watched the digital release from the original movie, the original release, and it looks beautiful. I got to say, the way they've remastered it. But I have a feeling it's the sort of changes that a director makes that he thinks are substantial and that an average viewer is going to go, so what did you change? Right. That sort of thing. But
I heard that the opening sequence was modified the most or something. Or did Coppola say something about that? But I don't know. Yeah, I guess I haven't heard what. It was shortened or...
Yeah. The whole movie is shorter by like 4 minutes or something like that. And
yeah, it's not a whole lot. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to guess he probably shortened some of the scenes in that opening because there were a few moments in that opening that were kind of long, shall we say.
I think, that whole opening is like a good half hour, which it kind of needs to be, I think. But
right.
This is a bit of a bookend, isn't it? Because that's what it echoes what happens in the first Godfather movie.
Right.
Where you have Connie's wedding, which takes a half hour of that film, the first half hour. And now you have this event, which is pseudo-sacramental, which is, and then you had, in the second movie, you had Anthony's First Communion, which also took at least a half hour of that one. And it seems to be this is how we start Godfather movies with a big sacramental scene of some sort and party, because it's always the party afterward.
Right.
So,
and you have all these people at this party or this event, and it looks kind of, I feel like it feels somewhat normal, even if you haven't, like, I haven't been to necessarily big things quite like that in that way, but it's like, I find it interesting how as it explores that and you feel kind of comfortable or at home at it, at the same time, it's like, oh, wow, yeah, but there's a lot of shady stuff going on. So, yeah. Well,
yeah, I mean, on the surface, as someone from an Italian-American family, those events feel real. Not the, making the dirty deals on the side. I mean, they might have actually happened when I was a kid. Who knows? But the, the kids running around, the parents, singing to the music, the food everywhere, all the food. There was always tons of food. Yeah, which just that's like a lot of ethnic communities. And in fact, I don't think you have to be Sicilian to find this looking familiar. I think a lot of, especially Mediterranean cultures, are like this. Greek and Greeks, Italians, French,
Chaldeans are like that. So I can attest to that. Yeah, absolutely.
So I would say that it feels, I love how he directs these scenes because they feel real. Like that scene where Michael is dancing with, gotta get all the names right. So Sophia, Mary, his daughter, and the little kid kind of like comes in, and that's that feels so like unscripted and real. It had to have been unscripted. And so what do? You just kind of, you kind of give into the moment. You wonder, where is their mother, this child's mother, and then you go on and you incorporate her into the dancing or whatever. And I just feel like it's part of the brilliance of Coppola, where he makes it feel so natural. Anyway,
well, it's like he threw a party and then they rolled cameras.
Yeah,
it's like the people in the scene genuinely seem to be enjoying themselves.
It makes you wonder how long that scene took to film, that whole sequence. It's kind of amazing.
And usually for a scene like that, they try to be as efficient as possible. So in most films they would have like some extras and shoot it like in a certain way where it looks like there's a bunch of people there, but there's really not, because of the angles. Maybe they'll get one wide shot where they only need a bunch of extras for like, a few, for like an hour. But yeah, like you said, he's literally throwing a party and like in the first one, it's like they literally threw a wedding.
It was huge.
Yeah. So I can only imagine, all the moving pieces and the logistics of that must have been a difficult thing to shoot. But, so, I mean, this is the guy who, directed Apocalypse Now. If you know anything, anything about the behind the scenes of that film, this guy could direct anything. Like he's been through it all, by this point. So he's just obviously a master at his craft. And, this movie is not really his shining moment for him, in most people's eyes, but but you can still tell in this film, he knows how to direct the heck out of a movie.
Yes. So we should point out that this was co-written by Francis Ford Coppola and Mario Puzo, who wrote the original book and the original screenplay. So the Godfather movies is really a collaboration between these two men. And, the direction is all Coppola, but, the writing is also Puzo. So it feels like this, part of the movie. In other words, what am I trying to say? Sometimes you get sequels that are directed by somebody else and written by somebody else, and they kind of they're connected, but they're not the same. Sort of like the Jurassic Park movies. They all got rampaging dinosaurs eating people, but they don't have that through line like the Godfather movies do. One of the things also I kind of want to mention up front, before I forget. I wonder, would this movie be more highly regarded if the first two movies were not two of the greatest movies ever made? How does it suffer because it has to follow Act 1 and Act 2 of the best? Could anything possibly have lived up to those two movies? In other words,
it definitely doesn't help.
Right.
But I would, I've tried to, judge the movie, as a standalone. And I don't think it would reach any sort of heights that most early Francis Ford Coppola movies did.
Mm-hmm.
It may have been seen as like a decent movie, but I don't think, I know we'll get into a lot of the issues that are sort of infamous for the film. It's hard to get past those things. And I think, it probably would have been at best, like you think of like Scent of a Woman, like Al Pacino wins the Oscar for that film because of his performance. I mean, Al Pacino gives an amazing performance in this one too.
Right.
I don't think the film suffer like he doesn't suffer anything from the faults of this film. I think he heightens it the way Al Pacino could. But Scent of a Woman is a decent film. I wouldn't say it's an amazing movie. So I think at best it could have been seen as something like that, where you have a great performance by Al Pacino, but it's really just in a mediocre, a movie that you'll probably see on, one of those movies that shows up on TNT and TBS, that just kind of replays over and over again, sort of deals. But yeah, I mean, the weight of the first two films obviously bogs it down even more, and why people like myself don't try to forget that it's part of the canon. But there are good. I mean, there are some. It's not all bad, but like I said, I think I don't think it would have been seen as like a Francis Ford Coppola. It wouldn't have been one of his best, I would say.
Right. How about you, Mike? What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think overall, I enjoy it, and I've been skeptical. Like every time I watch it, I feel like I go into it critical. And there's definitely stuff in it that's, I think could be improved or could have been improved, or things that, I can kind of imagine differently. This does, and we'll get to it later, I'm sure. This movie has one of, and it's hard to rank it. I might just sit down and do this sometime, but definitely in my top 3 for worst line of all time. Which that's a very special category for me. No, it's right up there with Anakin in episode 2. Sorry, Father Fett, if you're listening to this, but I don't like sand. It's coarse and irritating. It's right up there with that one for me. And just sitting there like, oh goodness. So, but overall, I think that it may have suffered from just the time, between, the second one, I almost said episode 2, kind of between Godfather 2 and Godfather 3, because it's 16 years, I think, between, and especially when you had the Godfather, the original one coming out in 1972, being so iconic, being followed up 2 years later in a time when I think sequels weren't really expected to do that well necessary. It wasn't really a thing.
Not for movies like this. Yeah, like a Star Wars or something, or like big sci-fi or action blockbusters. Yeah, but not like this.
Yeah, and I mean, the fact is, you can watch the original one, and it's a completely fine standalone story. You don't need to go on. And then the second one to so brilliantly open it up more to have those flashbacks and that interspersed storyline, which is such a different kind of, very different approach to either its predecessor or its successor, right? Because neither one of them does that quite the same way, of course.
Right.
So, and then to wait 16 years and then this anticipated, here's the conclusion. And which of course I wasn't around for those original runs, so I don't really know from experience what that must have been like, but I gather that might have been a part of it for people. So, I saw all 3 of them more or less back to back the first time I ever saw them. So I've always kind of associated them all as one story. But I imagine that may not have played out that way for people at that time. That's just my guess.
My understanding is that Coppola didn't really want to make this one. Like he felt like the first 2 movies told the story, but Paramount kind of really pushed him, and he needed the money. I mean, I guess he didn't make a movie at all in the 80s. Like he hadn't made anything since 79. So he got pushed to make this movie. And so that's what he did. And it kind of feels a little bit like that. Like this is the one I had to make. And then they didn't let him make it the way he wanted, because he wanted it to be called The Death of Michael Corleone, which is kind of an interesting way for people to walk into the theater too, because that's not exactly what happens. And so, and then Paramount wouldn't let him. No, it needs to be The Godfather Part 3. It's like, you know, I could, so going into it like that. So yeah, I can see that.
Pacino, you know, I think, you know, Pacino's performance is, I mean, I think it's fantastic, but it's, I think from what I was reading last night, he too, was sort of in a rough spot for, you know, and had a couple years of, you know, misses, you know, and just was really kind of broke. And, you know, I think, I had forgotten that this came out the same year that he was in Dick Tracy. And what's so funny is like when I was a kid, I saw that movie when I was a kid, and I still to this day I love it. And what's funny is that's kind of how I imagined Al Pacino for a long time, because it was like my first real Al Pacino movie, and I forgot. I was watching a clip last night. I forgot that gangster scene with him on one end of the table and James Caan on the other was kind of an interesting little cameo, or having the two of them together. But yeah, this I mean, for what it's worth, I think he picks up the character pretty seamlessly, you know, 16 years later with a believable version of Michael, you know, probably closer to 20 years later in the storyline, because I think he's actually playing him a little bit older than he was at the time by just a few years.
Yeah, I think they had him playing Michael Corleone at 60. And at the time,
he was only about 50.
He was
or
50.
So, at the time.
So yeah, it was about a decade, and they did the makeup to make him look older, and all that.
It's weird. It's weird to think of Al Pacino being like aged for a role. You know what I mean? Because he's been in so many things, and it's for the last 20 years or so. It's the other way. You know.
Yeah, they've been de-aging him because man, he looks old. He looks like he's running the race. So we got to talk about the one of the big criticisms of the movie, which is Sophia Coppola. They got her to play Michael's daughter, Mary, which is a key role in this. I mean, she plays an important role as Vincent's love interest, which is creepy. first cousins, and all of that. And I have to say, I mean, she wasn't the worst actress I've seen in a movie, but man, her lines were wooden. Like she just,
it was very flat.
I didn't buy. Like I didn't buy her. And when she, okay, we're spoiling everything. By the way, this podcast spoils. When she dies at the end, I didn't feel it. You know,
that's the biggest miss.
Nothing.
Yeah, and I'm a dad, and Al Pacino's there is in pain, and I'm not feeling it because I just didn't get her. You know,
I mean, you're right. I mean, she's not the worst actress in the world, but when you're acting beside Al Pacino and Diane Keaton,
this cast,
Talia Shire, like it really sticks out, and then she had to redub like a good portion of her lines, because she was her even though she's Francis Ford Coppola's daughter, and has the Coppola name, she had more of a Valley Girl accent, and that was hard for her to sort of escape for this role. And
when she pronounces Corleone like 3 different ways in that first scene.
Yeah, she has a hard time saying the Corleone.
Like, it's your last name.
Like,
I've got a hard Sicilian name too. I can sympathize.
And you hear that Winona Ryder was actually supposed to play Mary
at one point.
Is that right?
She was actually on set. She was on set, and she
nervous exhaustion.
Exactly. She passed out like in her hotel room because she had just finished, I think, Mermaids.
I'm laughing because it was like
air quotes, nervous exhaustion. Yeah.
Her attitude and her like personality and Stranger Things. I'm like, would have been really
right. Well, the story goes.
Go ahead.
The story goes she suffered from exhaustion. Her first day on set, she passed out in a hotel room, and she left, and then ultimately, obviously went to Sophia Coppola.
Yeah. Before Winona, it was going to be Julia Roberts.
Really?
I didn't even know that.
That would have been an interesting casting. This is like just after Pretty Woman, so
it had to have been 1990. Yeah,
she's still pretty young then, but wow, that's just that would have been weird. Also, Madonna wanted to play the role, and Coppola said no.
Yeah, she wanted to play a lot of roles back then.
And that was also the same year as she was also in Dick Tracy.
That's right. That's right. Wow. Okay.
There was another actress also set to audition, Rebecca Schaefer, which you've never heard of her probably, but that's because she was murdered by a stalker.
Really?
Just before that, she was in a sitcom with Pam Dauber of Mork and Mindy fame. And she hadn't really broken out, and this would have been her big breakout role if she'd gotten it. It was tragic. So there's accusations against Francis of nepotism, but the fact is he had a lot of his family working on these movies. Talia Shire is his sister. She was that's Connie. So it's not like a new thing. There is talent in that family, but
isn't Nick Cage his nephew?
Yes.
Probably, yes.
I think. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, speaking of Talia Shire, I have to say, Connie in this film was much preferable to the Connie in Godfather 2.
I think Michael sums it up. She's like, now they fear you. And he's like, maybe they should fear you.
Yes.
She's like, she's chilling at a few points in this.
She's the power behind the throne. She's the bloodthirsty one. She's the Sonny in this one, really. I mean, Vincent is kind of the Sonny, but she really has taken that role.
No, he's not. He tries so hard. That's one of my biggest gripes is Andy Garcia as well. Him biting his finger and doing the Sonny, like it was very cringy for me.
There were some moments. Yeah. Well, if I wanted to criticize, we're criticizing. One of the things to criticize is the complexity of this plot. There's so many moving parts. There's so much going on. There's the Vincent thing where he's in or he's out, and there's the Joey Zaza, and then the Vatican bank thing, and then the Altabello and Lucchese and at one point Vinny's supposed to go as a turncoat, and that just goes nowhere. Like that, nothing ever happens with that. And it's like there's so much going on.
And then that's when they go to the opera. Altabello's like, et tu, Vincenzo? And I'm like, Wait, was he still? I'm confused. Yeah.
By the way, since we're jumping ahead anyway, let's just do it. Let's just jump into it. The cannoli. Sure. The cannoli.
Oh yeah.
Take the gun, leave the cannoli, leave the gun, and it's the cannoli that's the weapon of death. I have to love as cheesy as that is. No pun intended. Actually, I do intend that pun. As cheesy as that is, I just kind of love it because it's kind of funny to me just that he went there with it.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Full circle. Yeah.
Full circle. All right. So we start with. There's a lot here where Coppola is connecting us to the first two movies and the events of those movies. We start with the old lake house at Tahoe that's now abandoned. Where part 2 ended, it's now derelict and abandoned. That was what was the year that part 2 was supposed to end in? 74 or so, right? Actually, maybe even earlier than that.
It was earlier because it starts in like 57 or 58 or something, and I don't think it covers a lot more than a few years because sometime
the
kids
are
60s. Still young at the end of it.
Right.
But probably early 60s.
And we're interspersing that with New York 1979, where Michael is receiving a papal knighthood for his charitable works from Archbishop Gilday, who's known as the Vatican banker. So let's talk a little bit about the Vatican stuff, because this is stuff that I know really well and from my background and my work. So in 1978 or so, there's a weird dating issue in this movie where the movie is set in 79. Paul VI dies in 79. But in reality, Paul VI died in 78. There was, for some reason, Coppola said it a year later.
I think it's an average because they said because the Vatican banking scandals, the real life stuff was like 81, 82. Yeah. So my guess is they were trying to maybe meet in the middle on it to kind of make it cross over.
Kind of compress everything.
Maybe, yeah.
The thought is that so there was Paul VI died. John Paul I was put in, and then there was this conspiracy theory that John Paul I was murdered which is what happens in this movie, because he was about to crack down on a Vatican financial scandal. The more things change, the more they stay the same. If as we record this, there is a trial at the Vatican of some cardinals, former cardinals, for Vatican finance shenanigans. And there was one of the bankers was found hanging from a bridge, actually Blackfriars Bridge, I think it was, in London. So it wasn't in Rome or Geneva, I think maybe even. And there was this big Vatican banking scandal. And so what Coppola is trying to do is trying to connect the Corleone family with that, with the events of that. But yeah, they did that weird date thing where they said it in 79 instead of 78, but okay. And the idea of the movie is that Michael is he's gone legit. He's sold the casinos. He's not involved in any of the underworld stuff as much as he can be. He wants legit businesses. And so the Vatican bank is underwater. It's got this huge deficit, and he's going to fix a big chunk of that in exchange for getting a controlling interest in this business called Immobiliare, which is actually based on a real company, one of the oldest construction companies in the world. It actually dates back to the 1700s or something like that. And the Vatican did at one time own a controlling interest in it. So it's this convoluted plot that involves this, and then going back. Then you've got his whole thing where he's trying to reconcile with, Michael's trying to reconcile with Diane Keaton's character and
Kay. Yeah.
Kay,
and his son too, or reconcile, or just try to figure that out, right? Navigate that. Yeah.
So anyway, we start with this papal knighthood that he gets and a party. And at the party is where all of the threads start paying out. They start having the threads. We have Vincent shows up and invited. He's the illegitimate son of Sonny. And he's working for Joey Zaza, who took over Michael's illegitimate business in New York City. And there's conflict between them because Vinny thinks that the business should be his because he's Sonny's son. So
I want to throw out there, it was very, I just thought it was neat how many non-main characters but important characters from the originals they got back for roles like Enzo the baker. Vinny's mom is the same actress. And that was good for consistency. But I do have to laugh a little because Michael, of course, going into these meetings, at this party, very reminiscent, of course, of his father at the wedding.
Yeah.
But if you delete all criminal activity entirely from the scenario, it reminds me a lot of what happens with me at high school sometimes, with just so many kids coming to me with stuff that doesn't have it. It's like, what does this have to do with me? Or some kids. I was just laughing. I was like, I have my days sometimes where it's just, could you guys just give me a minute?
Yeah. Well, Billy was saying this about me.
There's no he doesn't have hours, right? There's no office hours for Michael Corleone. It's just all, there's business is business.
Yes. And the business happens at family gatherings. That's the thing. It's where, because everybody's there. I mean,
right.
Just as an example, we just had Easter and my brothers and sisters and I went into another room and sat around the table and we're discussing my elderly parents and their situation and their needs. And this is where business gets done. Now, in our case, it's not a criminal enterprise. Yeah. But it's the sort of thing. But you're right. I love the new casting. Although interesting, Robert Duvall did not come back as Hagen. He wanted,
which was a shame.
Yeah, he wanted more money.
He killed him off. No.
Yeah. He wanted to make at least as much as Pacino, which it was Robert Duvall. You can't. By 1990, he was as big of a star as Pacino. I think he deserved it.
Absolutely.
So instead, they killed him off.
Pacino wanted more money too, and apparently Coppola threatened to kill Michael, begin the movie, write Michael out of the movie, and write a version where the movie begins with Michael's funeral, and then Al Pacino's like, okay, I'll do it for for less money.
Did they just sort of swap Robert Duvall's character with George Hamilton's as like just the new consigliere?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. B.J. Harrison as the new. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, he did a fine job, but it's just interesting. Like,
he did
Tom, you're out.
Yeah. Yeah. Tom, you're out.
Tom, you're out.
Not nearly as much to do for George Hamilton in this, but it's just a
not the
thing.
Emotional connection or anything like that. That would have been better.
Right. It wasn't like family, like the same sort of thing. Yeah. So, and then we have there was a great line when they're talking. The press is there, and they want to talk about Michael's being a mobster, and says the guy says to the press, "The Pope this very day has blessed Michael Corleone. Do you think you know better than the Pope?" Which is a funny line because yes, because it was obviously a bad idea to do this for Michael Corleone. Oh man. Man. And then we have when we find out that Anthony, his son, wants to but father, I want to sing.
I want to sing.
Monty Python reference. He wants to be a musician instead of a lawyer. And
Dom, can I throw one thing in here quick that we can maybe talk about it in other, because it comes up routinely. It'll come up in a big way later. But this idea of, I mean, like you said, this was like a pseudo sacramental kind of thing. There was this papal honor, but this whole, of course, theme we're going to keep coming back to of the religious trappings right around this just completely shameless, murderous kind of world in so many ways. And how do you, and none of us are perfect, and I'm not preaching by any means, but like there's a lot of stuff these guys are doing that I'm not doing in my life.
Right.
So, or that are just obviously, if you're a true believer, how do you even like imagine someone like, I can go to baptism, I go up and light my candle in my prayers, and then I order a hit from the chapel in the hospital, for example, like in front of the crucifix. And so it's so strange, and I think it's an interesting reflection just in and of itself that the sacraments, they're absolutely infinitely powerful to do the thing, right? But they're not magic. And
exactly.
That's not, and so I think that's a theme that comes up routinely, and we'll see later with the cardinal, of course, that you offer all the grace you can, just offer it freely, but we need to receive it. We need to actually be disposed to the grace. And that's a big reflection point, I think, just in and of itself.
Right. And to be honest, I mean, I'm not, running a criminal enterprise and planning people's murders, but I still have sin in my heart. You know what I mean? I'm going up to, I'm not perfect. I'm still a sinner. Right. And there is that contradiction in me, when I go, but there has to be contrition, you have to be, and we'll talk about it when we get to the confession scene, but there has to be that firm decision to amend my ways, that firm, and then there's the hope for grace. I really want to talk about that scene because it is a very powerful moment. So that I'm glad you brought it up. There is a lot of Catholic imagery in this, a lot of Christian imagery. The crucifix is majorly in several big scenes. That first one where he's getting the knighthood, when was it Vinny, Connie, and Al Neary are conspiring to kill Joey Zaza in front of the crucifix in the chapel, like completely oblivious to what they're doing, and
doesn't Connie like tell him to do it and then go kneel to pray?
Yes.
Like right after she says that.
We follow the forms. There are the forms we observe. And that's one of the I think the themes of The Godfather is it's the roles we play. It's all about playing a role, your place in the world. Michael, from the first two movies, Michael wanted to do something else, which is kind of ironic that Anthony is now doing that to him, and he doesn't see that his reaction is his father's reaction, although he deals with it a little better eventually. But like we keep playing these roles, and we get stuck in them. We can't break out of them after a while because we're so in them so deep, and we're unconsciously going back in. And just as I was just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in. But the fact is Michael, you went back in. Like, you're still dirty dealing. No, it's not a casino, but right. Yeah. So I thought that was and that's the classic line from the movie, by the way, is the when I thought I was out, they pull me back in.
Yeah.
So,
by the way, that stroke that he acted out was pretty incredible.
Yeah. It's supposed to be like a diabetic stroke, which it's Al Pacino. I mean, who chooses the scenery better than Al? You know what I mean?
Right.
But it was pretty amazing, pretty fantastic.
And then he has like the opposite happen before the confession, where he has hypoglycemia, and then and he says like, this usually happens when I'm stressed out. Yeah, it's a good thing that they have a tray with orange juice and candy at the ready. In every abbey. Okay. It is Italy.
Yeah. Well, it's true. It's like my grandmother's house. There was candy around the corner. She would pull it. It's like magic.
Oh my gosh.
They probably had a notice that it's standing there with it.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention, this is a note I had about the Immobiliare deal. So follow here. Michael wants to buy the Vatican's 25% share in exchange for wiping out a large part of the Vatican bank's deficit. The Immobiliare in the movie is based on a real company in which the Vatican once owned 15%. But in that case, it didn't sell its shares to Michael Corleone. It sold its shares to the Gulf and Western Company. Do you know what the Gulf and Western Company is? In the 1960s, it owned Paramount Pictures, the company that made The Godfather. So it essentially had sold it to The Godfather. I just think that is poetic. I love that.
Really? Wow.
Oh man.
I don't know if that was planned, but it's awesome.
That's a little more subversive, but just as meta as the newest Matrix movie, which I did not really enjoy. But when they just flat out like go after Warner Brothers in the plot,
I
didn't see that. Kind of funny.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, there's some overt references that are kind of funny, but wow.
I have a feeling Coppola wanted to kind of call out Paramount as bad guys a bit, but that's kind of funny.
No doubt.
We also have an interesting passing of a generation represented here. Joey Zaza represents the new kind of the mob. In fact, in Puzo's original novel, The Godfather, he actually, right at the very beginning, he talks about the change in the mob from the old days when it was loan sharking and the more, honest kind of crime of loan sharking and gambling and that sort of thing. But the new bad mobsters, they sell drugs and they do prostitution and all these bad things. It's like, you're still bad. But in this, we have this like Joey Zaza is a bad guy because they're non-Italians that are part of the family now. And they're selling drugs in the neighborhood, and the neighborhoods are getting unsafe for the little nonas or walking around the streets and so on and so forth. And so you're getting this idea of that it's not like the old days with when the mobsters were keeping the streets safe for the right kind of people, I guess. That's sort of weird people thing.
It kind of brings it full circle because that was the whole conflict in the first one was the potential introduction, Sollozzo bringing in what was it, cocaine or heroin? I forget what it was. I think it was cocaine, wasn't it? Sonny talked about the white powder.
Yeah.
But that who's going to control this and that kind of stuff. And old man Don Corleone, right, not wanting to be involved in that, and them not being willing to accept his, sort of his traditional stepping away from that. Right. Yeah. Right.
And that's kind of, we have that again, that echoed here, because in that scene where Michael he's really cutting ties with he has the commission. Now the commission, for those who don't know, was actually a real thing. It was all of the heads of all of the major mafia families from around the country. They divided up the country into territories to kind of end some of the gang wars, and so there would be less stepping on each other's toes, and to cooperate. This was a major plot of part 2, a major part of that plot. Mm-hmm. So now he's going to meet with the commission, dissolve his business relationships with the other families, but give them huge shares of the sale of his Vegas casinos. Like he's basically buying them off because they were feeling like, hey, you're buying, you're going this big Vatican banking deal, and we got nothing of that. So he's buying them off, but Joey Zaza gets none, which is a huge disrespect. And so this hit gets put on all the families, and we're led to believe that Zaza was behind it, but was he really, or was it really Altobello and the guys in the Lucchese? Was it really about the Vatican banking deal? That's one of the things I kind of felt like was left a little confusing, to me anyway. What do you guys think?
I love. I just want to throw it real quick before I forget it, because Joe Mantegna. I love. It's very difficult for me to take him seriously in this role, because it's so similar in a more serious way to his Harry Flugelman character from Three Amigos. Do you remember that kid? He's like the studio executive, but it's just an absolute riot, and he's such a ridiculous character, and he's so brash, and but there's not really any difference in some ways between him and either of those roles to me. So like there are moments where I'm watching this and I'm like, okay, Joey's like, I'm with Michael, like Joey Zaza, like what are we talking about Joey Zaza for? Jeez. So I'm sorry, but cut to you, Andrew, for a real answer.
I mean, I think it was organized by Zaza. I mean, I agree. It's not like, again, the one of the big gripes with the film is how convoluted the plot is.
Yeah,
and it's if you looked at this film on paper, and you're like, okay, Vatican bank scandal, Michael Corleone, trying to buy 25% and all that sort of stuff. Like, there was a good movie here, I think.
Yeah.
They like for whatever reasons. I mean, like we mentioned at the top, like, it was probably rushed, and he did, Francis wasn't really into it. Al Pacino wasn't. I don't think he was even behind sort of the direction. From what I've read, he wasn't really feeling the script either. I think Michael's biggest gripe with the film was like, he felt that Michael would never feel remorse for killing his brother.
Right.
That was just Al Pacino's opinion on the character. And I could totally see that. Because and I would, the more I thought about that when I read that, I kind of agree with that. I feel like, Michael's character is so cold, and he was still very cold by the end of part two.
Mm-hmm.
The most chilling cold he's ever been. I mean, he obviously, was behind the murder of his own brother. You could see a guy like that just never changing. There are elements of that here, obviously, the whole idea again of like, still being a part of the criminal world, even though he's trying to go straight. But yeah, I think, when it comes to the Joey Zaza and then the Vatican bank stuff, I think there was a masterpiece was here. I think it was possible. I think if Francis maybe got more creative control, I don't know why he had to fight so hard for the first one. And we talked about it in our first podcast. I can't imagine why they just didn't let him do whatever he wanted. I mean, knowing that, I guess it's 1990. Like you said, Al Pacino really had a few misses. And Francis Ford Coppola, I mean, he's always he's deeply regarded for Apocalypse Now and the Godfather films, but outside of that, he's had a lot of misses, right. Outside of those three films. So yeah, maybe that has something to do with it, but yeah, at the end of the day, you could see that there could have been a great movie here, but and in my opinion, at least, and most people's, it fell short.
I feel like if they cut a bunch of the Mary stuff and some of the Kay stuff and sort of focused on his plot, his, the banking scandal stuff. I think a lot of that other stuff kind of bogged down the story, and
totally.
Who am I? But that's that. I'm trying to tell Coppola how to make a movie, but I just feel like if I were to be asked, I would say if you cut some of that stuff out, this would have been a lot more comprehensible and without that extra stuff. I mean, I know you want to have you feel it at the end when the shooting on the steps of the opera house, but even then you could have done something different. And
and like Andrew said earlier, it's how much of it was Sophia Coppola's fault, whatever you want to say, or just it just doesn't really have the effect it feels like it should. Which, and to be honest, here we go. For me, maybe it's because at that moment, somewhere in the back of my mind, that line pops into my head. He's your first cousin. Then I love him first.
So creepy.
God, gag me. Like every time I hear that line, and I'm just thinking, and I know who wrote it. It was Francis Ford Coppola or Mario Puzo. Like, how do you, you have that line goes through your head. First of all, that's embarrassing enough. And then you tell someone out loud that, and then you do, let's make that in the movie.
That's the line you think is one of the worst lines ever.
It's so terrible. Yeah. I just, he's your first cousin. Then I love him first.
Dude.
That was pretty creepy.
Cringeworthy to say.
Yeah. I think if the movie focused on, again, going back to the confession scene where the cardinal's telling him, like, you've sinned so much that it's just that you suffer. Obviously foreshadowing his daughter's death at the end of the film,
right?
His greatest suffering. I think that we didn't need to see a lot of Mary. Like, if you just establish that, this is his daughter,
right?
And maybe you focus on, Michael's past and everything catching up to him.
Right.
I think there's a great movie there, a great character study. I mean,
or if it's Anthony who dies on the steps,
right,
and we get his.
It's his show. I mean,
Anthony's big moment. I think that would have made it even more tragic there.
Yeah. And then, oh my gosh. And then her talk about bad lines. Her final line where she just looks at him and says, "Daddy," and falls to the ground. It's again, it was comical. It's like, how did Francis Ford Coppola, I mean, maybe it being his daughter had some sort of bias to do with it, but
someone
he's watching the dailies.
Shoot that one. Yeah.
Did you guys, I don't know if we were going to, I have a quick question before I forget, because, sorry if it's out of place or anything, but I'm wondering, I'm still not entirely sure, just from what their intention was with that scene. Did the assassin intend to shoot Mary along with Michael, or did he miss? Because it's not super clear. He nicks his arm. Like he doesn't really obviously carry out the assassination of Michael, but there's part of me that always wonders, like, she's dead center in the chest. One shot, and I think and there's two shots that are fired.
Yeah. Spray and pray. I think it was. He was trying to just because he had he tried to shoot him from the balcony. That got interrupted.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's true.
So it was his last chance.
That wasn't plan A.
This is the guy who never misses. Like,
right.
As the assassin who never misses, he leaves a little to be desired. You know what I mean?
Does.
Like, he didn't really live up to his billing. No, but but I get what you're saying is, like, it could be, if he was as good as they say, maybe it was that Barry was the target, all along, but that's headcanon more than anything.
The target. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the confession though, because Cardinal Lamberto, who eventually in this movie becomes Pope John Paul I, he's meeting with him because Michael's trying to get the deal to go through. But he comes across as the one guy, the one churchman that we've met who is not really corrupt. He's the guy who actually believes. And he starts off, he talks about the men of Europe, For centuries, they've been surrounded by Christianity, but Christ has not penetrated. Christ doesn't breathe within them. And I'm like, that is a fantastic line. And
what a great, and the analogy with the rock.
Yeah.
Yes. He takes a rock out of the fountain. He says, look at the rock. See? And he breaks it in half, which I'm impressed. And, that's some strength there, dude. And then, he says, but the water has not penetrated the middle of the rock. And I'm like, wow, that's almost Christ-like in a parable,
Absolutely.
But I think it's a really great moment because all of we as we said before, all of these Corleone men, all of the Corleone family is surrounded by Christianity. The trappings of Christianity, they have sacraments and masses and all that sort of stuff, and they cross themselves, but Christ has not penetrated their hearts. Christ doesn't breathe within them, and that's really what in one sense, what this movie is saying, whether Coppola intends it or not. It really, the three movies, all of them show how you could warm that pew every day. You could go to daily mass and it won't make a difference if Christ isn't in your heart.
Judas was an apostle.
Exactly. Yep. As St. Paul says in Galatians, it is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives within me. If Christ is not living within you, then it does you no good. So
that's what I think too, and that's a whole other conversation in and of itself with regards to this. But that's why I'm always a little apprehensive about putting too much stock, and I know we have to have something, I guess, to kind of go off of. But a lot of the studies that we do and surveys and polls and all that, where it's like you're a mass attendant. You're like, how often do you go to mass? How often? And I'm just laughing because I'm like, those Corleones are.
They're pretty regular mass attendees.
Very regular attendees. They and it's like, so it makes you think.
And it's not all about who gives the most money to charitable causes either, is it? I mean, that's another big thing that happens in this.
My goodness.
Michael gives $100 million to take care of poor Sicilian families. It's just kind of, funny of all the causes to give to. But the reason they're poor is because of you guys, the mafia. Anyway, so in that scene, we have Lamberto offers to hear Michael's confession, and Michael's kind of shocked. He's like, "Oh, I'm beyond redemption," and then I don't know the point of confessing if I don't repent. And then the cardinal asks that great question: "What do you got to lose?
Yes.
What do you have to lose?" And so, as he confesses, a bell tolls. And he breaks down, and I love how he says. I don't have the actual words here, but the way he kind of ekes out what he actually did, where he finally just says the words, "I killed my brother. I killed my mother's son." And then the cardinal says, "You won't change, but I'll give you absolution anyway." Which is kind of problematic, but
he says your life could be redeemed, but I know you don't believe that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
and there's that I love the idea that he is walking the walk of like he's not the judge,
Right.
So I'm like here's what my Lord has given me the power to do, and I offer it to you, and if you don't accept it, it's not going to work,
Right.
It's
offers the gift, and you can take it or refuse it, and Michael apparently. At least at this point, refuses it. I like to think that after, like, in between the second to last scene and the last scene, Michael had that conversion experience and was redeemed.
Well, clearly it seemed like. I mean, it looks like a good, I don't know, 20 years or something. It seems like a long time has passed.
Right. Right.
Yeah. I mean, he does say that. He does pray. He's like, I swear on the lives of my children, give me a chance to redeem myself, and I will sin no more. So there was a little, hope there,
right?
But, and again, I guess that's another sort of foreshadow. Is like, he's swearing on the lives of his children, and then shortly after that, one of the lives of his children is taken.
Right, because I think because he makes the decision, tells Vincent it's time to fight back.
Right. Right. Yeah. Exactly.
By the way, Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Michael, at this point around here, wonders why Don Tomasino, who's the Don in the town of Bulgaria where they're from, why he's so loved and Michael is so feared. And he doesn't understand why, because he's tried to do so much good. He's tried to put on this face. And why do people fear Michael? And it's, as I think, as you said, Andrew, that in the last two movies, this is the kind of guy who coldly kills his brother in cold blood. You know, it's just, you're feared because you're ruthless. And
I wonder too, like, if it's just, every one of us is unrepeatable, all of our circumstances, we're every one of us is absolutely responsible for our own actions, but you can't, none of us is just a 1-for-1 swap. So, Tomasino, like, he may have done a lot of the same kinds of things. You get the impression he's, living the mafia life.
Right.
But it's a different world, and it's just, not to excuse it, but it's just, for whatever reason, all the different forces in play, the time, the era, the places Michael's been, like the back and forth over the ocean, like, it's not the same thing.
Right.
But it all carries a heavy toll, like the one thing they all have in common. In fact, I was looking at my notes from our very first run through of the first movie, and I wrote down organized, in air quotes, I wrote organized crime equals crime. Like, it's
right. It's still
it's still sin. It's not, it's, you call it whatever you want.
Organized or disorganized, it's still crime. Yeah.
That's the at the time of this recording, there's this public trial thing, or this whatever it is, between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard and everything. And I saw the one line, I forget what, I don't know which one of them said it, but something like, I was hitting you, I wasn't punching you. And I was like, that sounds like something my daughters would argue about, like, it's a childish, like, it's an original sin, fundamental human flaw, this nitpicking. And then you just magnify that out to an adult level of rational planning and coordination. I mean, that's how you get the terrible evil, right? In history, it's but it's not hard to understand where it comes from.
So you mentioned that he swore on the life of his children, and then right after that, he gives the order to Vincent to fight back. Okay, now it's time to fight back against Lucchese and Altobello and the others, but asks him to give up Mary as the price, which is in some way what he did as well. His price was Mary's life later on, we'll see. And this is when he makes Vincent the Don. So he's kind of giving up his position in the family to Vincent, which I felt like 2 years ago, this guy was a nobody crashing your party. It felt a little, there needed to be more time, I felt like, but okay. So
I got to give Andy Garcia doesn't, there was enough sort of similarity in my view, to him and like young De Niro.
Yep.
I think it just is something that seemed to work. Like, there was a lot of those echoes, that nostalgic kind of echo there. But that being said, I've thought, now, to his credit, he's grown as an actor. He has a lot more experience over the years. But I like him so much better in the Ocean's movie as Terry Benedict.
Yeah.
Than in this. And I think it'd be interesting to imagine, like, if he was more like that in these, it would be kind of interesting, rather than like Andrew was kind of hinting at earlier, like a lot of and I don't know how much that was Andy Garcia, versus directing and stuff, with like, okay, I want you to try to be as much like James Caan as possible. And it's like,
a bit of a rabid dog on the scene. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it was a stretch for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say, what Connie does say at one point about Vincent, that you're the only one who reminds me most of my father. So like she was remembering Vito and Vinny and how similar they were. And so that does kind of echo what you were saying about how he kind of reminds us of De Niro's version of Vito too. Right down to the Zaza in the street, that I didn't mention, by the way, that Zaza was killed in a religious procession. Another crucifix moment where the cross is present at one of these moments. So that was something I forgot to mention before.
And that was like such an absolute kind of parallel in a lot of ways with it to the Finucci.
Yep.
One from almost 50 years earlier.
Right. On the same street.
The story.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think it was even the same street that Vito was gunned down on too, right? Was that the same?
Oh, maybe. I don't know. I'll have to go back and check.
Yeah, I thought it might have been.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
So that happens then. I had to look up Pezzo Novante because they say it a bunch of times. You know, they goes, oh, these Pezzo Novante. It's apparently Sicilian slang for big shot, in a non-complimentary way. Like, oh, you think you're such a big shot? You know, you're too big for your britches. I guess that's a reference to a kind of caliber of a rifle or something like that. You're a big caliber or something. So just for anyone who wants to know, I looked it up. So we have the opera. We come to the opera. Anthony has got this his big new role. He's now an opera singer. His son Anthony, and we get the interspersal of the scenes of the opera, which is this opera Cavaliere Rusticana, where I don't know I didn't look up, actually. I should have looked up the plot of the opera, but gathered from what I saw on the screen about this conflict between these men, where they're going to kill over a young woman. And so while in the midst of that, we have Michael has dispatched his killers to go take out Altabello and Lucchese and this other Vatican banker, the Swiss guy Keinzig, and Archbishop Gilday. At the same time, they've dispatched this other guy, Mosca, to come kill Michael at the opera. Or, as we were saying, it could have been Michael, could have been Mary. So, and then in the midst of this, the Pope is murdered, presumably by the Vatican banker guys, Lucchese and the others. As at the same time as on the stage of the opera, a crucifix again is carried on stage. I mean, it's almost, is that a little heavy-handed? Maybe, I don't know, maybe not. But it's Coppola's making a point here. So we have the Swiss banker hung from the bridge. Lucchese is stabbed in the neck with his own glasses by a callow. That was brutal. Al Neri kills Archbishop Gilday by sneaking into the Vatican with a gun. Okay.
That was
Where were the Swiss Guard in there? I don't know.
Anticlimactic.
Yeah. And that, the famous scene of him falling from the height, the body falling toward the camera. Don Altabello is poisoned by the cannoli, as I mentioned. And by
the way, just a little nitpicky thing, because we're all Catholics here, and I don't know many many bishops who wander around on their own in full mass regalia. In the middle where's the sacristy in this place? He finished up and he's to walk a mile by himself with his mitre on and the whole chasuble, and I'm like, what? But it looked a lot better. Right? Yes. I mean, I think that's, you get the flowing, I don't know. Yeah. And the thing that got me was this is Anthony's big moment. This is the thing that Michael has been, and he uses it even to the point of killing Altabello right there in the opera house. Like he doesn't even see that what he's doing, how he's still dragging his children into this. Until the very end, where where Mary is shot along with him, and then we have, as Mary's dying, and Pacino is doing the open mouth silent scream until it comes out. We have this montage. We see Michael first dancing with Mary, then dancing with Kay, and then dancing with Apollonia. We see him the three scenes of dancing, and then we go to him, as we said, sitting alone in the courtyard, elderly Michael now, the courtyard of Don Tomasino, slumps over in his chair and falls lifeless to the ground as the puppy dog in the scene's like, why'd this guy fall over? Right. I was really distracted by the real life dog is what? Me too. I was I didn't notice that before.
Anyway, so that's how it ends. This is the death of Michael Corleone that Coppola wanted to name it. So what do you think of all that? What do you any thoughts on that whole sequence?
Well, I saw somewhere that the I guess Coppola did not he didn't indicate to the editor, I think it was, the idea of having it be silent like that when Michael's just losing it on the stairs.
Yeah.
And he was impressed by that decision himself, apparently, because it really does create powerful, like we were saying, like I'm not, unfortunately, super affected by Mary's death.
Right.
But Michael's reaction to Mary's death is just incredible,
Right.
And and just so visceral. And even how you see everybody else who, is suffering, maybe just as much or has just as much reason to suffer and be, upset and brokenhearted and just traumatized, how they all kind of turn and look at him. Because it's like, it's the Psalm 130, right? De profundis, like out of the depths. I mean, like it's the deepest depths he's ever been in, and that's where he's at. And they've never seen him like that. No one has. And so that was, I don't know, and it's really quick too. Because when I was watching it again last night, I'm looking at the timer and stuff just because it was getting pretty late, and I was like, oh wow, yeah, because I know what's coming up. I've seen it before, and I'm like, that really all happens in like 2 minutes? Or 3, I mean, it's just done, And so it really just, pretty long movie and then just over, It's pretty, it really does, So I think it's effective.
Yeah. There is that sense I get that maybe that moment breaks Michael. Like he's never the same again to the moment of his death. There's nothing more to say. Like, and I think Coppola might be saying that there's nothing more to say about Michael's life. After that point, his life is over when Mary dies.
And which makes you wonder, is that the death of Michael Corleone?
Yeah.
And everything else is commentary, like him falling in the dirt. Well, that's just,
it's just the end
commentary.
Of that. Right.
Yeah.
It's the end of that scene, essentially.
And like Andrew said too, or like, or was it Andrew or Dom, you saying about that hope as a viewer, that, and the question mark, right? Did that redemption come somewhere in there?
Yeah.
Is that the merciful God giving Michael basically he gives us every shot that can possibly be given to us, and of course God, who knows the end before the beginning, and not actively willing, if it's a movie, but if it were real, it would absolutely not be the will of God actively for Mary to be murdered, but that idea of somehow in his mysterious providence, and not for the sake of Michael's salvation, because Mary's life is infinitely valuable just in and of itself. But it makes you really reflect, right, on how could we even begin to even have the slightest idea how God's will works, and how intertwined everybody's story is and what the meaning of this suffering and this suffering. It really opens up a lot of interesting conversations, I think.
Yeah, you can't help especially as a Catholic watching this, to be hopeful that the repentance, that Michael fully repented and that prayer that he prayed after the confession was sincere and hopefully it carried on after the death of his daughter. But yeah, it's open-ended, I guess. I think I agree. We kind of see the figurative death of his soul when his daughter dies, I guess. And the physical one we see at the end is just sort of the bookend. But yeah, it's, I agree. The ending is effective mostly because of Al Pacino's performance. That scream. And again, I agree. I think the combination of the muted scream and then we hear it, towards the end, and then you see the look on everyone's faces, like Diane Keaton's face, like says it all in that scene. She's like, she doesn't even have time to process, what happened. She's so focused on, Michael. It really is an effective performance at the end. But unfortunately, mixed in with Sophia's performance. But again, you feel what you're supposed to feel at the end. I think that was, at the very least, Francis Ford Coppola was able to sort of get that across in this film. Yeah, I think you see the anguish. I think that was an important part of this, is to see his anguish with all the religious themes and the crucifix, being everywhere. It was really a foreshadowing of, it's like, it's the role reversed, right, of Mary watching her son die on the cross. It's Michael watching his daughter die in front of him,
right,
and experiencing that level of anguish. And again, from that confession scene, the cardinal's telling him, well, you've lived a life of sin, so it's right that you suffer. And I think it was obvious that he understood that. If there's anything sort of that redeemable, or at least we can give credit to Michael, is that he understood that at least at that point, at the end of the film, he understood that he deserved anything bad that was coming to him, right. And that he lived a life full of sin and crime, and that's as a Catholic, that's a hard that's hard for anyone to get to have that self-realization that you are a sinner, and that you deserve, that we all deserve, we all deserve damnation. It's only through Christ's mercy that we have eternal life.
Right.
So I think that's a great sort of theme or symbolism to take from the ending of the film. It was they could have gone about it a million different ways, and again, the movie could have been better, and we hoped it would be, but I think that there's a lot to take away from it that like you said, can start a lot of good conversations, and really we can really relate to, especially as Christians.
Yep. The last thing I'd like to talk about is just the future of The Godfather. There is no IP that Hollywood does not want to mine into and get every last penny out of. Sequels? What do you think? Should there ever be a sequel to any of these movies, or prequel? Should they ever make another Godfather movie?
No, I don't think so. I mean, wasn't there a novel came out a few years ago that's like a prequel novel, or in between something like that?
Puzo wrote like a couple more novels, right?
Oh, that's right.
So what happened was there was
Sicilian.
There was going to be a fourth movie. Coppola and Puzo were writing it. Leonardo DiCaprio was going to play a young Sonny Corleone, and then
I remember this. Yeah,
Puzo died, and so then it all fell apart. And what happened was Edward Falco eventually expanded Puzo's whatever he'd written already into a book that was released in 2012 called The Family Corleone. There were some other books that Puzo had written, but this was the one that would have been the basis for the planned movie sequel. Paramount sued the Puzo estate. The Puzo estate sued back. They settled out of court, and the result is that the studio has the rights to make future movies. And that's why I asked the question: should there ever be more Godfather movies? I agree. I think not everything needs to be sequeled. Not everything needs to go on. I think some stories should end, and that's
this movie. It's like Citizen Kane. It's regarded, as the greatest, one of the greatest, if not the greatest film of all time. Like part one or part two, are interchangeable in that sense. It's up there with, again, Citizen Kane and Francis' other film, Apocalypse Now, is like, you'll never, like, who would even dare? Like,
right.
Obviously Hollywood has no shame, but like, I think there is a line, and I think The Godfather will continue to hold that line. I think hopefully forever. But again, you never know. But I think by now, 1990 being the last Godfather film with this one, if we haven't had it by now, I think it's a good chance that
we're safe.
It'll be safe. Yeah,
I did see that.
Exactly.
There had been that speculation of at the time of a just off the Titanic. It would have been, I guess, Leonardo DiCaprio as a young Sonny.
Yeah,
that is an interesting thought, but yeah, no, I think it would be. I think it would just be, foolish to touch it,
Yeah.
And even something like, I know there's been a lot of like derivative, like Wizard of Oz stuff, but I just like, I could never take seriously, a full on complete redo of something like that, and I know even something like people get all up in arms sometimes about, some of the Willy Wonka stuff and all that too. It's interesting when you those IPs that are so iconic one way or the other, whatever the genre is, and you start hearing talk of like, we should do a reboot. I'm like, if you say reboot one more time, like
I'll give you a reboot right in the rebut.
Like, how about something original, But
Yep.
And just again that's why I love the pitch meeting guy, like on YouTube, with the idea of like,
the best.
Well, and if this doesn't work out, we can just reboot it in 2 or 3 days. There it is. Yes.
I showed them my shirt. This is super easy, barely any inconvenience. Yes.
Absolutely. I didn't even notice that, but no, yeah, there's so much. I think there's so much truth in that of just like, when they just meddle instead of just let the story be what it is,
Yeah.
And I think that's why you get the first 2 or so. They're in their own category, right? And the third one's kind of like an epilogue.
Yeah, or coda as they call it. Yeah,
there you go. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, I agree. I just think it is what it is. It should stay the way what it is, and enjoy the book. Go read The Family Corleone if you want a little more. There have been a lot of. I mean, the Godfather spawned a whole genre of mafia movies. Your Donnie Brasco and
right.
There's a whole bunch of them that were made in the 80s and 90s and beyond, and then all the Boston gangster movies, The Departed and stuff. I mean, they're all out there. So if you want, I mean, if you make a new gangster movie, but just the Corleone family.
Yeah, there's
done.
no shortage of good mafia stories to be told, like true and fictional. I mean, I totally agree.
Yeah. All right, so. I think any final thoughts on part 3? I mean, I don't want to cut you off unless if you get anything else unsaid.
I just saw on Google that I don't know how I missed this, but I guess this already happened a couple months ago, but it is the 50th anniversary of the original Godfather film. So there's been some re-releases.
Yep.
I think AMC put it out in a few theaters. So I missed that. I don't know if it was out around here, but I'd like to see them all
on the big screen,
more remastered kind of. Yeah. Because I have them. I have a DVD set from like 15 years ago or something, but a lot's happened since then with the technology.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do re-releases of the film on anniversaries like this. Yeah, and you're right. Yeah, during the Oscars, they did a sort of Godfather thing for his 50th, but
like other things took the stage at the Oscars.
Well, sure, right.
That's how I missed it, I guess.
I know, right? Yeah, but yeah, I have like the Blu-ray remastered version of the trilogy, and it looks awesome. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I just have the digital, the iTunes movies I bought there, but I may want to get a better version too, because the remastered versions. Because I saw, like I said, I saw a trailer of the remastered part 3, and I'm like, wow, that looks gorgeous. So yeah, awesome, very good. All right, let's. I think that is a good place to end it. Before we go, we want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the secrets of movies and TV shows, including Stephen B., Daniel S., Hillary G., Joseph A., and Matthew N. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the secrets of movies and TV shows and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. We would love to hear your feedback on what you think of The Godfather Part 3 or what we had to say about it. You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/secrets or at the StarQuest Facebook page. or send an email to secrets@sqpn.com, or visit the new StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. Until next time, Andrew Hermiz, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of The Godfather Part 3.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Mike Creavey, thank you as well.
Oh, hey, anytime.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the secrets of movies and TV shows on StarQuest.